What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up? What up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Rebel Radio. I'm your host, Josh Levine. We're back with a new episode today featuring my man, Erik Abel. He's a booking agent for folks like Bone Thugs, DJ Quik. He put together the Dilla Weekend Festival, the Snoop Dogg Puff Puff Pass Tour, all kind of stuff. He's putting hip-hop shows in your area. He's also a DJ. He's got his own radio show, and he's going to tell us some great stories about his journey from being a rapper with the group Animal Farm out of Portland, some of you might be familiar with, to making his way behind the scenes in the music business. He's got some great lessons in how to avoid carrying people on your back who maybe aren't as motivated as you are. Talk us through kind of the ups and downs of being a big fish in a small pond, coming from Portland to moving to LA and trying to swim with the sharks. And now let's get into our interview with Erik Abel. Well, dude, thanks for doing this, man. I'm excited to talk to you. I know Lee's excited that we're having you on.
Yeah, I've known Lee for a long time.
He's trying to big up Portland through the podcast. So
yeah.
No, it's good stuff, and I like having people on that have a lot of jobs or have moved around.
That's been me.
Yeah, no doubt. So I'm learning. So yeah, I want to talk about it. So you were an artist, now booking agent, DJ.
Yeah. I started out DJing and then producing, then MCing.
Yeah.
Then started my own little indie label and got distribution and learned to do everything just because out of necessity. You know? So how I want to start kind of at the beginning. How did it all get started? How did you first even get into music as a fan? I got into music, I would say I was like a pure hip hop head.
So what's the beginning? Do you remember the first record that you bought, or the first record that really impacted you?
I remember A Tribe Called Quest just being like I remember liking their first album, but when I saw the Check the Rhyme video, I remember just being like, that's it. You know? And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was like, I want to do that, whatever that is. You know,
how old are you at that point?
I guess I was 14.
Okay.
So I was 91.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as I got more into hip hop at that point, I think it didn't always have a positive influence on me.
Sure.
But it kind of shaped who I became, and it definitely shaped my career.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could attribute it specifically to A Tribe Called Quest, just kind of piquing my interest.
Yeah.
And it just kind of everything else.
And so then,
just
did
happened.
You start DJing right away after that, or
no? Okay, so I went away to college.
Okay.
In Pennsylvania, and it was Amish country. It was Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Small school, and I learned to DJ on the air on the radio station.
Oh, cool.
I taught myself.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was awful. Basically, we had two turntables set up on one side, and then there was some old kind of switchboard with toggles. So I learned by no mixer. I just was flipping the toggle switch and learning to scratch. But I had the 7 to 9 slot on a Friday, and so. And back then, everyone serviced college radio, so you had everything coming out. And I mean, I just taught myself on there, and I DJ'd fraternity parties, and then I started getting into production from there.
So was there a moment you remember when you felt good?
Good about what I was doing?
Yeah. You felt like you got this now?
I think I was just enjoying it, you know? I was just enjoying the fact that I was, rocking parties and creating, and that was just a good feeling to
Do you remember the first party you played?
No, I can't remember that. No. But a lot of college was a haze. So
Sure.
yeah.
So was it like more the feedback, that you're getting from people, or was it more like, internally?
Yeah, I think it was just like feeling like, okay, now I'm a part of this, not just like a fan. I'm actually contributing to this culture in some way or another. Even though it was, college parties, like it really wasn't, but it was,
Something.
for me, I was just enjoying learning to scratch and, creating my first beats and I don't know, I just love the whole process.
Yeah. And then were you thinking that music was a career at that point?
That's when I started to. The summer after my junior year, I went to New York and interned at Relativity.
Okay.
And that's when I kind of realized I don't want to do this music business. Like it wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So then I kind of took the route of,
What was signed to Relativity at the time?
it was like Common was on Relativity, 3-6 Mafia.
Yeah, so it was a good
They
time
had a
for
bunch
them.
of people. They had the Beatnuts.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was, it was a dope roster. Like
Yeah.
I loved what was on there. MOP was on there. Of course, like now I've ended up like working with a lot of these guys, so that's been dope. But at the time I was just like, okay, I want to go strictly, I want to produce and DJ, and that's what I kind of put my focus towards. So fast forward a little bit, when I got out of college, I moved down to LA with a couple friends. We didn't know what we're gonna do, but we were like, we're gonna go do something in music.
Sure.
And they'd left like within 3 weeks. Both of them went back home.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I was like without a place to stay.
Nice.
I was sleeping in my car for like, I don't know, it wasn't that long, maybe a week or two.
Yeah.
And then I'd convinced a friend of mine who'd moved.
That feels like a long time, I'm sure.
It did, yeah, because I had no idea where I was going.
And you don't know when it's going to end.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it was kind of like one of those steps where you just kind of jump in feet first. And when you're 22 years old,
Yeah.
You kind of bounce back easily. So,
Sure.
And I think that being naive actually has its advantages in that situation. Because now, once you have kids and stuff, you can't,
Right.
you just can't do stuff like that. So,
Sure.
So one of my friends from high school was living with his friend, who he'd convinced him to move into this little studio in North Hollywood, and then he convinced him to let me move in. So there's 3 of us in a tiny room with no air conditioning. It's like 95 degrees in August, and just kind of sweated it out for a while there. And
Literally.
Yeah. And I was working like odd jobs. Just I took this job as like doing street marketing, where it was the year 2000, and we were going to business trying to get people to download stamps.com. And all I was supposed to do was get them to download it for a free trial.
Wow.
I couldn't even do that. Like I couldn't get anyone just download this and try it.
Sure.
So like,
back then that was such a hassle to try to do that.
right. And probably they didn't know security wise, like what's this guy trying to get me to put on my computer?
Well, the idea of buying stuff online in 2000 was so foreign.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that didn't work out. But out of that, I met a good friend of mine named Kale Bunker, he does a lot of video production, and he's a director. And we were both young at the time, but he introduced me to DJ Arrow, he'd just taken Mixmaster Mike's place in Tommy Lee's group, Methods of Mayhem. So Arrow and I got together, and we made an album together. And
What was the record called?
It was called 7 Deadly Songs.
Okay.
It was like an EP that we did together.
Yeah.
And it was basically started out as a demo.
Yeah.
And I remember like kind of my first lesson from this was, I remember we went over to Tommy Lee's house after we had like 3 songs done. And he'd just like been on cribs and stuff. So it was kind of surreal. I was a young kid. And it was Tommy and Mixmaster Mike and Arrow and myself, and we're like taking flaming Dr. Pepper shots, and we're like listening to this music, and Tommy's like, this is dope, I'm gonna take it into whatever label they were on at the time. And I was just like, oh, this is it, like, I'm gonna be signed, and we're done, this is it. And that was kind of my first experience of not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So
wait, why do you think your two friends left that you moved, and why did you stay?
I just don't think they were. I think they were. The idea of like doing something in music it looks a lot more exciting from the outside. And I think for a lot of us who have kind of built our careers, we've went through phases of trying to carry other people on our backs who weren't necessarily as driven as we were. And I think that was it. They just, they wanted to come down. It seemed exciting. We'd be partying and hanging out and, meeting girls or whatever. And my objective was never that. My objective was always to like build a career in the music industry. So, I kind of saw it as a more of a business possibility, and I think they saw it as more we're just gonna have fun until reality hits.
Sure. Why do we try to carry those people on our backs?
Because I think we're young and naive, and we don't have access to other people who are driven like we are. If you're lucky enough when you're young to find someone like that and partner up, it's probably, you're probably like 100x on the rest of us because you're working with people locally, and the chances are that you're going to find someone as driven as you right away.
Yeah.
You kind of have to go through trial and error and realize you can't carry people. They have to want it just as bad as you do. And eventually, I think through trial and error, you meet other people like that. But it's a long process to get there. I don't know with you, did you have those kind of experiences?
Yeah, a little bit. I think, not as dramatic. Like I didn't move across the country with anybody or nothing like that. But yeah, I definitely came across people. For me, it was interesting because, I started my career and, you're thrown into this environment in LA where everybody's out every night. So you're seeing the same guys night after night in the clubs or whatever. And then you just kind of become friends with, you just met somebody and then you see him the third time. You're like, oh, let's hang out. Right. And then those become your peer group. And, for a while there, we were all kind of rising at the same time, that sort of thing. And we had this, for me, it was a decade earlier than what you're talking about. And there was this feeling of like, this thing that we're doing is just going to grow forever. Right. It's like there was all this success happening and the world was just getting bigger and bigger on a daily basis. And people that, people like Puffy who, weren't part of our circle because on the other coast and whatever, but you're seeing this guy go from an intern just like we were to now being, on MTV every day. You're just like, oh, that kind of thing actually happens. Right. And yeah, so there's some people, you see a lot of people that drop off. I've definitely seen people now that like in my Facebook who like in their 20s, they were rising stars in the music industry. And now in their 30s, 40s, it's a whole, they just gave up. Right. For whatever, for a lot of reasons.
I think one point that you make that's important is that you were in LA. And I think that makes a big difference to be in certain places. So if you're trying to get in the music industry and you're not in LA or New York, you could do everything in that community. Like for us, is like when we were in Portland, my group Animal Farm at the time, we'd open for everyone, right? So we played with Wiz Khalifa and De La Soul and, Macklemore as he's coming up and Meth and Red and like with Lee Feldman, for instance, like he had a party there that was a monthly party that was just like, if he had that party in New York, it would have like everyone throughout the world would have known about it because it was always like crazy packed. Right. He had the dopest people coming through like for Portland. But I think it doesn't carry as much weight if you do it in a smaller community.
So it's interesting if you think about that trade-off, right? Because, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Like on the one hand, it's so much easier to break through. If we're starting a party here in LA, I've done that a dozen times throughout my career, and a couple of them have really cracked and been the thing that everybody was coming to. And most of them didn't. They were just like a thing that lasted as long as I had attention span for it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then but so in a smaller market, I could be the man really easily or much more easily by having some drive and a little bit of smarts, right? That's true. Not to put anyone down in small markets, but the bar's lower. to really stand out, and the payoff's lower.
The payoff's a lot lower though.
And so, I wonder though, is there a certain point in that trajectory where it's valuable to be in that smaller market, maybe, and then make the move? Or I don't know. I think you see examples on all sides of that.
Yeah, I think, for me, and then, so like fast forwarding later, I ended up moving to New York, which was kind of another just jump off the bridge and hope everything pans out.
Sure.
But I felt like I'd done everything I could do in Portland.
Yeah.
So it got to that point, like, I don't know what else to do if I want to continue to grow and learn, and not necessarily go like the corporate route. I probably need to go to New York or LA.
Sure.
And so at that point, I had a son, and he was 3, and I had an ex-wife. I had a wife at the time. But, it's one of those things where, again, like, I took such a risk that it ended up kind of backfiring because she left and went back to the West Coast with my son, which was the hardest thing that I've ever had to deal with.
Sure.
And you have to you have to sacrifice a lot in this industry, like if you really want it. And so that was kind of another lesson. Like we went to New York, and I was just like all I really knew, I knew a few people, but like Rob Swift was my good friend at the time, and he was just kind of co-signing me, like, you need to meet Erik, work with him. And
nice.
So I ended up having like residencies with him and with Total Eclipse. And it just kind of like, it grew, and I knew it was going to, but not everyone can see your vision.
Sure.
So if it's taking longer, if you're in a relationship and it's taking longer for that to develop,
right.
But it was a huge sacrifice. But ultimately, like, I don't know what I would have done with my career if I didn't make that move. I was, like I said, I was kind of like in a smaller community, and there's nowhere left to go.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know there's some people that's like, they're kind of the king of their own little castle in these small markets, and maybe it's just down to your personality and what you're in it for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, like, I'm trying to think of who, but I remember back in the day, like, if you were working a record in Houston, there was that guy that he just ran the town, and you had to go deal with him, and he got a lot of love and a lot of attention from really big people that maybe if he were in New York, he'd be the 25th guy, not the number one.
Right. And that suits people, like the big fish in a small pond mentality.
Absolutely.
But it's like, if you can carve out a living, no matter where you are, and maybe you can live more comfortably there. The costs aren't as much as living in New York or LA. That's great. Yeah. As I get older, I could see that being more, something I could look towards.
Is that right?
Yeah. I enjoy being here for now, but like, who knows in the future?
Sure.
Like, as long as I could work from anywhere, which at this point I can.
Yeah.
I could see going somewhere, I couldn't be like in the middle of the country where there's nothing going on.
Right.
Like some people, but I could be like in a smaller city.
Mm-hmm. So, so you went from being a DJ and producing to then being on stage, as an MC.
Right.
Do you remember that first?
Yeah, I remember like first shows, and I was not good. I think I've always been a good writer, and lyrically I've been strong, but I don't think I was like a natural performer. I think some of the guys I ended up working with, like, they kind of brought that out of me. And, after a while I became good on stage. Like, I had good energy, but I don't think it was, some people are just natural. This first time they step on stage, you're just like, oh, he's got it,
So you get up and you do your first show, or one of the first, and you realize you're not good.
No, I didn't realize it.
I
thought I was good.
Okay, good.
But
that helps.
Yeah, you have to have confidence, I guess, when you get on stage.
Okay.
But looking back, I could see.
Got it.
I needed a lot of work.
Okay.
But I enjoyed it. Like, as much as I enjoyed being in the studio, and I was always the guy in the studio who would like outwork everyone. Like, everyone's tired. It's 4 a.m, like I'm still going.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that process, and I enjoyed being on stage just as much. So, I mean, like I just loved it.
Do you ever find yourself dependent on feedback from other people? Like, does it matter what the crowd?
It gets to that point.
Yeah.
And since I haven't, since I've kind of stepped back from being an artist, I can look back and see how I guess how those criticisms affected you or the praise affected you. How I never really thought of myself as like this egotistical person, but I think when I look back, it's like in order to be an artist, you have to be self-centered because you have to put your art first.
Yeah.
And so I could kind of look back and be like, even though I was always cool to everyone, and I think I've always been pretty like easygoing. I did it. Like the world revolved around my art, and I put some of the other like people in my life on the back burner. So I don't have any regrets. I think I've learned a lot, but I think as an artist, you get affected by that stuff, whether you want to admit it or not.
Sure.
And you could have like 99 great reviews on your album. You get the one, and that's the one you focus on.
Yeah. For sure. It's funny. I'm reading this book right now where he kind of says like he kind of argues there's no such thing as authenticity. That basically everything is manufactured, and partly because we're not, when you're on stage or you're making a record, you're only showing that side of yourself that you're choosing to, whether it's conscious or not.
Right.
And then, but obviously as a human, there's so much more that you're not exposing to people. And so it's always some kind of manufacture that, whatever you're putting out there.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you step on stage, I feel like you almost create a separate personality.
Absolutely.
And
right.
You have to, because you can't just be like that cocky walking around everywhere you go.
Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, it's like, I don't think we realize a lot of times how much creatures of habit we are, and that we are affected by our environment, and we kind of go through life almost on cruise control a lot of times, even though we think we're creating, we're doing, like we're thinking.
Of course.
A lot of times it's like, because we now digest so much information as humans, like we have to have that filtration system where we're almost like, if you're driving down a highway, you're not going to notice everything that passes by.
Absolutely.
And until all of a sudden a car brakes right in front of you, and then
Right.
your mind kind of clicks back on.
Sure.
Have you ever read The Power of Habit?
Yeah.
I thought that
Love
was
that.
really dope.
Yeah.
That one affected me for sure. Just kind of realizing like, oh yeah, everything I do really is a habit, and I
Right.
can change these things. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I definitely recommend that one.
Totally. I love that book. Is that the one where they talk about fast food? That like, they say like like when they put salads on the menu, like it makes people order the bad stuff more because you went through this thought process of considering the salad.
Right.
And you're like, oh, I'm making a smart choice. I can let myself slide. Like
Right.
even in the same trip to Burger King or wherever,
Yeah.
like just, it's so funny.
It's a lot of that. It's crazy when you really dig into that, and like how grocery stores are laid out so that I don't remember what it was, but basically, so you see, like, you always walk to the right. That's how it's laid out.
Right.
Like, and when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, I never walk to the left, I
Right.
guess. Like, but that's where all the fruits and vegetables are.
Yeah.
And then it makes you feel
Yeah,
better
so
about
then
buying all
exactly.
of the junk food.
You're like, I just
later
visited
on.
the produce aisle.
Right.
I didn't get anything, but, you know.
I picked up some lettuce. Now I
For
can
sure.
get ice cream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I mean, I think there's a lot of evidence, you know, the book I'm reading right now, Eating the Dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he also makes the argument that we're not really experts at what's going on in our own brains, that the way we kind of give ourselves credits for, that we probably don't really know ourselves any better than other people know us.
Right.
And, but, you know, I think that's, you know, if you think about that in music and in art more broadly, like, you know, I think people are searching for this peek into the artist's sort of true self.
Right.
And, you know, we have this crazy fascination with authenticity. But I think people don't really want authenticity. I think people, like, want a fun experience.
Right.
And that they might want it to feel authentic. They don't, it's kind of like going to a strip club. Like, we both know that there's a transaction here, but like while we're here, like let's make it feel like we're
Trying to
enjoying
pretend
each
like
other.
this is
Right? And
Right.
then, if you get that one that makes you feel like you're a customer, then, you lose interest real fast.
right.
I think a lot of music is like that.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And I actually think that, sorry, I'm just,
No, go ahead. This is
I'm
interesting.
thinking about this now because I've been reading this book, but like, I actually think that since hip hop, and maybe, I don't know if it works for rock, but I think since hip hop has kind of given up, it's like authenticity kind of has had this stranglehold on hip hop, and it's kind of gotten away from that the
Right.
last several years. And I think as a result, I think it's really blown up commercially since that's happened.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's manufactured now. It's so
Right.
different.
But that's kind of okay with everybody, except for like a few old guys.
except for
like me
the
and-
traditionalists,
Right.
us old heads.
Sure.
But I mean, it's tough because I can't, my experience as a teenager, which is like, that's the time when you really like sit and digest these albums and learn all the lyrics and everything. That's when I look back and have fond memories of. So these kids today,
Right.
this is their best times of their life and
Sure.
they're enjoying it. This is the music, this is the soundtrack. And so I'm sure if we were raised in a different time, we'd have different
Yeah, for
music
sure.
that influenced us.
So do you think that kids, I mean, I don't know how much you're in touch with teenagers today through work or whatever. Maybe run a boarding home on the side or something.
Right.
I don't know. But like, do you think those kids are having the same kind of experience that we were with their music?
It's different because the one thing that's different now is I think music is so oversaturated. There's so much music coming out.
Yeah.
Like you can't sit and digest an album because
Right.
every day there's so many new tracks coming out.
Right.
And also you're not paying for it. So I don't know if you have the same value attached to it.
Sure.
When we were kids, it's like we were so excited. The album's coming out this Tuesday. We went and bought the album and we listened to it over and over, learned all the words.
Yep.
I don't know that kids do that today,
So does that mean they enjoy it less?
No, I mean, I think they could still enjoy it just as much, but I think the experience is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I think, they enjoy it in their own way,
Mm-hmm.
It's, I don't want to be that old guy that's like, in my day, everything was so much better.
I understand that. I just
Yeah.
want, and I'm not necessarily saying that either, but I am curious, like you said, they're having a different experience.
Mhm.
And so what I don't know is, what does that mean? Like, what's the result of that?
I don't
right?
know.
Like, does it mean, I know for guys like us, right, hip hop, because we're of a certain age and we were exposed to hip hop at a certain point in our lives,
Mhm.
right, that it has so much meaning for us. The songs, but more broadly the culture and all of this baggage that we projected onto it, right? And that certain opportunistic businessmen, leverage for their own wealth,
Right.
right? And so all of that works out to like it being this massive cultural vehicle.
Right.
And so I wonder, like, is that kind of thing possible when people are having this totally different experience with it?
No, you are right, because I think that that not only was like just the music, it was everything we were.
For sure.
And I think now, because like you said, everyone's not creative, they're not original, they're kind of doing the same thing.
Mhm.
Eventually that's going to wear out. I mean, you can only like listen to the same song so much over and over, and it basically, a lot of it starts to sound the same. So I don't know. I mean, I think they enjoy the music, but there's something about being part of like hip hop culture in the 80s and 90s that I don't think it'll ever be replicated,
For sure.
So like for me, it's like I'm a little younger than, I wasn't around, like I was born in 77. So I wasn't around when hip hop like first jumped off, but I went back and studied it because I was so into it that I was like, I want to know everything about this.
Right.
I don't think if you talk to any teenagers, now that they're doing that. I mean, I don't want to generalize like that, but most
I think
of
you
them
meet
aren't.
the odd one that's like, I met a couple 14-year-olds who are like really into Biggie and,
Right.
just that whole thing. Like, but I think that's probably more the exception.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, like when I was a kid, like being into hip hop was the exception.
Right.
You were kind of like, I wouldn't say we were outsiders because we had kind of our own thing going on, but it was definitely not the mainstream thing to be into as a white teenager in the 80s.
Well, I mean, not if you listen to like Black Moon or something
Right,
like
for
that.
sure.
Like it was if you listen to MC Hammer or something.
Well, I'm just saying, like, even back then, like, I'm saying, like, so a generation earlier than that. So for me, I grew up on Rakim and EPMD and Public Enemy and Big Daddy Kane, and like most of the kids in my sophomore class never heard of any of those.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I mean, and that was still underground music.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and so it kind of brings me to a point like today, one thing that I've noticed is, yes, it's manufactured, and yes, you see all these people come with one hit and they're done, just like they did when, back in the day. There was always that aspect to pop music. But when I look at longevity and the people who are selling out arenas consistently, the J. Cole's and, Chance the Rapper now, like these guys have a lot to what they're saying. Like there's some depth to their lyrics.
Yeah.
And I think that it shows that good music can always prevail. I mean,
Yeah, it's
in fact,
funny.
Tribe's album was #1 this year, and
Yeah, absolutely.
it's still out there. Like people still want to hear good music that speaks to them.
It's funny you mentioned J. Cole. I was just talking to my man who works with Cole, and he was explaining stuff I didn't really know, that they've basically kind of given up on marketing. I wouldn't say given up. They've decided to kind of walk away from marketing. Like they're not spending all this money on advertising. They're not going after radio. They're just like, they're doing their thing with social and putting records out and playing shows, and the record's just as big as it ever was. Like they didn't even take this last record to radio.
Right. But I still hear it on Sirius, so
Yeah.
they still must be, getting it out there. Or it's
Well, I think radio, I mean, from what I can tell, the model shifted, right? And it used to be about, who's going to really pay us. I mean, I'm sure there's still a lot of that too.
right.
But I think it's also like, they got to look at what's happening on Shazam and musically and right. And they have, radio has to, they used to have a monopoly on listeners, right? So they could really dictate the terms and say, we're only going to play stuff maybe that we love or that's paying us or both.
Right.
Or like they could really set those. And now they don't have that monopoly anymore. So they have to compete with satellite, with streaming, with, podcasts, with all these other things. And so they got to play what people want.
Right.
You could kind of make that argument. I'm not the radio expert, so
I think
I
it
don't
makes
really know.
perfect sense because you're competing with people who can just click a button and play whatever they want.
Right.
It's such a different world now.
Yeah.
And I mean, my son is 9 now, and
Uh-huh.
from the time he's been, his life, the term of his life has been like, when he was even a 3-year-old, he's like, I want to watch that show, but I want that episode and I
Right.
want it now,
Yeah.
We never
sure.
had that luxury. So
No, I think we all would have wanted that if we knew it was possible.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So
For sure. What's he into musically?
it's funny. He really likes Eminem.
Okay.
And I definitely am like, I'm not the editor type of person. Like I'm not like you, like we can't listen to anything with
Right.
cuss words, but Eminem's pretty,
For sure.
some of the stuff he says is pretty violent. And
Yeah.
so I make him listen to like the clean versions with
Uh-huh.
him. But it's funny. I don't even know how he got into him.
Right.
He kind of did on his own.
That's
And,
funny.
he likes like some other like pop music, like Imagine Dragons and stuff
Uh-huh.
like that. So
Funny.
yeah, I definitely am not like dictating what he
Right.
listens to, but he hears, the stuff I listen
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
so
sure.
it's gonna affect him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's funny. So okay, let's go back to you.
Okay.
Um, so why'd you make the move to the business side and get involved in booking and that stuff?
I think, being a father and just kind of getting older, and I always saw that as being the end goal.
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to be an artist forever, but I enjoyed that as well. Like, I wanted to be able to do everything. It kind of comes to a point where you can't do everything. I even though I'm glad that, and I think that hip hop has this ability to teach a lot of the people that are from our generation to like do a lot out of necessity. So we learn a lot that's applicable through our lives.
Yeah.
But eventually it's like, are you going to be really good at one thing? Or are you going to be pretty good at a bunch of things? And so I felt like I needed to like turn this into a career, and being an artist probably wasn't my calling. So I eventually got a job, actually just through LinkedIn, with this agency in Nyack, New York.
Okay.
And I was living in the city, so I basically had to take a subway to a train to a bus, and it took me 2 hours each way. So I was traveling for 4 hours a day to work. I basically left at 8 a.m. and got back at like 9:30 at night. And I did that because they had Wu-Tang on their roster when I first got there.
Yeah.
And, it was like a lot of the stuff that I was a fan of. So I took this job as a booking agent, and eventually, like, I ended up moving back to the West Coast just because, like I'd said, my son was back here, and I was working for them from the West Coast. And that was kind of it. Like, I eventually, my old boss, he was kind of a typical booking agent.
What does that mean?
I can't, like, I always kind of feel like I have to, if I'm going to blame someone for something, I kind of have to give them credit for things as well.
Okay.
When I say a typical booking agent, I mean, a salesman.
Okay.
Someone who's kind of like, it's all about the business. He didn't really he wasn't friends with any artists or managers. It was just kind of like, it was all business transactions. And being from where I'd come from, like, I was friends with artists. So that kind of bugged me. But at the same time, he taught me a lot about the business and touring and booking and everything. So I learned a lot from him. So, I'm thankful for that. But eventually when I'd moved back to the West Coast, I kind of saw the writing on the wall that he kind of made some comments. And eventually he gave me an ultimatum, like, I need you to move back to New York. So I was like, that's not happening. So I came down to LA. I was in Santa Cruz at the time, and met with Jamie Adler. You know Jamie? Manages Bone Thugs and Harmony and DJ Quik. And Jamie's just like, just leave, like, come work with me, like, we'll work on Bone stuff. And I'd also kind of developed a relationship with Creed Bratton, who was on The Office on the TV show. So Creed was with the agency, and he left and started just working with me, and through that I just developed my own business. And I'd only been working as an agent for a year.
Nice.
And just, since then I've been on my own, which is I don't know what kind of salary I'd need now to not be on my own, because it's so amazing just to have that freedom. And as long as you can pay the bills and
Sure.
you're doing okay, to me that's priceless.
So what's better on the what do you miss about the artist side or the talent side, and what is better on the business side?
I miss creating music.
Yeah.
Like, it's a fun process, especially like if you're creating with other people, other artists. It's just, you hit kind of peaks of creativity that you don't get to hit in your normal life. So I do miss that. When I was doing that so much, like, I never thought I could step away and be okay with it. But now I feel like, life goes on. Like, I still enjoy my life. I enjoy it in other ways. I don't need to be on stage. I don't need to be like the center of attention. So, I think that's basically what I miss most, is just having that ability to have that creative outlet.
What do you think you learned from the creative side that makes you that benefits your clients?
I think just being able to put myself in their shoes. I think a lot of agents or people in the business can't do that because they've never like been on the road and done that.
Right.
So I think I genuinely care about the people I work with, and if they're unhappy at a hotel, like I don't want that to be the case. Like I want them to be happy.
Right.
And I want them to feel like I'm actually looking out for them. Otherwise, they could go work with any big agency that's going to treat them just like cattle,
Sure.
So I think that's probably the biggest benefit of working with me. I really genuinely care about, their career. And I work with them on not just like, okay, let me just book you as many shows as I can and make a bunch of money, but like, let's plan out like, when's your album coming out? Let's like make everything make sense. You know? So it's beneficial.
So how do you balance that? Because I definitely, like from the outside, it's easy to look at some stuff that you see artists do, and I'll speak broadly about, actors, anybody creative. Like you can look at some stuff they do and kind of go, that must have been the agent or the manager, like needing to get his commission. Right. So he like, not say pushed him into that, but there's stuff that like, artists, if you're a successful artist, you make a lot of money. Right. I know a lot of guys who are not that famous and they make, millions, they make $1 million plus a year, Not that makes it sound easier than it is, but but you know what I mean.
Still one in a billion, basically.
Okay, but we could both name dozens of people that are in that situation, right? And so one particular gig here and there maybe doesn't make that much difference to them, but it certainly might make the difference to the person who's making 10% of that. And so how do you balance those things? How do you balance your own priorities against your clients' priorities?
I mean, it's tough because it's not only, my artists are my clients, and I definitely have to look out for them first, but I also need to look out for all the promoters I work with. Because I can't burn them. Like, I can't sell them just this piece of crap and be like, it's worth 10 times more than it is. Right. Because they're never going to want to work with me again. Yeah. So I feel like I almost look at it like I have a lot of partners out there. I'm partners with certain artists, with certain managers, there's certain promoters I know I can call. They're always going to be honest with me about what something's worth. I don't have to play any games. I don't have to like pretend like, oh, it's worth, twice as much just so we can negotiate back to where it should be. And I think those relationships are really important to me because that keeps me like, it just makes me feel like, I have a team of people on all sides that I can work with. Sure. I don't know if I'm going off track with that.
I mean, I think that complicates things even more. There's a great story in The Kid Stays in the Picture, the Bob Evans biography, where he produced The Godfather, and he was trying to book Pacino for The Godfather, and Pacino's agent was like, he's on another job. I'm not burning my bridge personally with the studio to get him out of that deal. And, they almost shot that movie without Pacino. Right. And it was because he went around the agent and like made it happen. And it was the best thing for Pacino's career. Now, did they know that beforehand? Who knows, right? But to your point, right, like you have really three stakeholders to manage between your clients, yourself, and the promoters that you have to do business with, right?
And sometimes other agents that I team up with to book tours.
For sure.
It's not just me sometimes.
So is there some, is there like a guiding principle that helps you navigate all of that?
I mean, I think I just try to be fair with people. I really think like I go into every relationship just trying to feel like this is reciprocal and we're both going to benefit from this. Like I don't get off when I make a bunch of money and someone else loses a bunch of money. Like that, I don't feel any joy from that. I feel bad, And I think some people in business, like they look at it as like a competition.
Of course.
Like, I'm going to win and they're going to lose. But like in the long run, that's such a narrow-minded way to look at things. Yeah. But getting back to your point, like about what's important for the artist. I mean, I really do take that into consideration. Like if something comes along that's a big payday, that's, you know, it might not be the best fit or the best look, I'll talk to them and just be like, you know, this isn't like perfect for your brand, but do you want to make a bunch of money on this? Like, you make the call.
Sure.
I'm not going to force you into anything.
Yeah.
So if they feel like they need a little extra money, then maybe they'll want to do it.
Sure. Fair enough.
Yeah.
What do you think that percentage is of people that are like, yeah, let's just take the money?
I think a lot of people just take the money. And I think, like, you know, like as an agent, a lot of times how the deals work is there's a back end percentage, which, you know, like a lot of times after all of the expenses and taxes and the artists are paid and the promoters make their 15% profit, then there's 85% on the back end that'll go to the artist. So a lot of promoters will try to convince you to take, like, you know, just take a percentage of the door or you know, a lower guarantee and a higher back end percentage.
Sure.
If you bring that to an artist, like, they're never gonna say, oh, it's cool, we'll just take less. Like, the goal is to bring them as much money as possible so it makes sense for them to leave. Maybe they're leaving their family for a month or, you know, just to go out on the road can be strenuous for a month.
Yeah.
So you have to make it worth their while making it fair for promoters so they can make some money too.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, sure. So I read that you were on a semi-pro basketball team?
No, I wasn't on a semi-pro. So I actually, a friend of mine owned a semi-pro team and brought me in as like a minority owner.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was interesting.
Yeah. Are you still
No,
doing
that's
that? No.
like, I don't even know if that league's still around anymore.
Oh, really?
But it was interesting. I mean, I've always played basketball. I love playing basketball. And so I don't know. I was just interesting to kind of, okay, I'm going to learn this business a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah.
Did you learn anything from that then applies to your business?
I don't know. I mean, basketball, like, it's still like putting on an event. So I guess in a sense, you know, you're still promoting that event and you're still, you know, you got to get fans out. And so, yeah, in a sense. But I don't know. It was a lot of stuff I already kind of knew.
I mean, the assumption in sports, and you know, I don't really know anything about sports business, but the assumption is that, like, if the team's winning, then you'll sell tickets. And if the team's not winning, then it's going to be much harder to sell tickets. Is that, like, is there more to it than that?
I mean, I think there is. In those situations, it's like a semi-pro team is like you're playing in these small communities.
Yeah.
There's really not much else going on. And so it's like, I mean, you just have to convince people that it's worth coming to. You know, the ticket prices have to be right, and you have to promote right, and you have to give them some sort of incentive to come and kind of check it out and enjoy themselves, make it fun for a family.
Yeah.
Maybe you offer like packages for the family
Sure.
to kind of get people out at first. But yeah.
So what about that in music? I think people, you know, some folks are much more creative than others, whether it's promoters or artists, in how they package up their shows. You know, I know, like, you know, Kid Rock does his thing with the cheap tickets and the beer included, and, you know, it's a big white trash festival.
Right.
Like, who do you see that's doing that's innovating that concert business?
I mean, I think Chance the Rapper is, like, I think what they did with Wrigley Field was, you know, next level for Chicago.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen some interesting stuff over the years that, like, there was one group that they'd done something through the navigation on your maps where you went to a park. I think it was in DC. And this isn't really live concert business, but this is just, you know, being creative to you know, build your fan base. Like, you had to go to different parts of the park to hear the different songs.
Oh, cool.
And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
You know, that Sleepify thing. Did you ever hear about that one? When Spotify was like just paying for plays, some group had convinced all their fans to just play this. You heard that?
No.
They just play this track over and over. That all it was a blank track, And so they ended up making like
That's
$20,000
crazy.
that paid for their tour.
Yeah.
So they went out and played for free for their fans.
No way.
So that was cool. I thought
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
interesting.
That's cool.
But yeah, I mean, there's always ways to be creative.
Stick it to the Swedish.
Yeah, I mean,
I love it.
you know, that's probably 20,000 is nothing for them. But I think like too often, especially like veterans in this industry, just get lazy,
Sure.
and it's easy to just be like, oh, here we go, we're gonna do another tour. I'll do a few, you know, radio interviews, and you know, we'll post it on Facebook, and that's it. Like,
So, I mean, you bring up a good point. Like, so I think people do get lazy, especially again when you're already successful and it's not gonna make or break your livelihood one way or the other, right?
right,
But also, I think it's got to be so much harder on your 10th tour to like really come up with ideas that are groundbreaking, right? Like, you know, again, when you're 22 and doing it for the first time and you bring this fresh perspective to the world and you've never, you know, you have that naivete, right? Like you didn't know that the Rolling Stones did this, you know, 40 years ago, right? Or whatever. So you just kind of do it.
yeah,
And you put your own spin on it and you almost like can innovate without trying
yeah,
or without all the baggage.
right. You figure out ways, like you don't need a big budget. You're gonna come up with something creative that's gonna
Right.
stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then when you have a big budget, it's like, oh, let's get those Tupac hologram guys and let's get the,
right.
you know, the Beyonce merch van. And like, you just kind of, you see this stuff and you're like, oh, I want that. It's kind of like going to the mall, right? And just being like, I want all that stuff that I saw in the magazines.
Right. And then for a lot of people, when they're on the backside of their career and they no longer have that budget, now
Yeah.
what do you do? That's the question, is like that's when I feel like a lot of people give up being creative because they don't have the budget to do anything creative.
Right.
And they're older.
Yeah.
They're not like, a lot of people just don't put out new music because it doesn't have the same effect. People
Sure.
come to hear their old songs anyways. You know, how do you get revitalized at 45, you know, after you've already done 15 US tours?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, that's something, but I will say, like, I always think there's room to grow, and I always think there's, you know, I always think you can learn.
Yeah.
And I don't know, did you ever read Carol Dweck's Mindset?
Yeah. Mindset.
That
Love
one
it.
changed my life.
Yeah.
Because I was it was after, you know, my ex-wife had moved to the back with my son,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just kind of going through a low phase. And I realized, like, I read that and I was just like, I've been so stagnant for the last couple of years. It kind of just shocked me out of it.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend that one for
That's a
anyone
good one.
who's, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, you know, we're not done growing. Just
Right.
because we're not in school doesn't mean we can't educate ourselves and
For sure.
get better.
So have you had mentors that have helped teach you some of the stuff along the way, or are you figuring it out all for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have. On the artist side, I think I kind of figured a lot of it out on my own.
Yeah.
With, like I said, my old boss, it was an international artist agency at the time. Now they're Patriot Artists, but he taught me a lot. Like in the year I was there, I learned a lot about the business that I didn't really understand just from booking my group and, you know, groups that I worked with. And so I learned a lot from him. I've learned a lot from Jamie Adler. Like, he's pretty hands off. Like, I just kind of handle stuff on my own. But, you know, he deals with people in a different way that's a little more compassionate.
Okay.
He's more friends with the acts he deals with. And that's always how I've wanted to be, because this is a fun business. Like, we're lucky to be in this business.
Sure.
You know, if I like look back at my 16-year-old self and he saw like who I was working with, he'd be excited, you know? So I try to like keep it in perspective that, you know, I'm lucky to be doing this. There's a lot of other jobs I could be doing that I would like. So
Absolutely. And what do you wish the artists knew? Like, you know, again, having been on both sides, so when you work with clients now, are there things that you kind of wish that they understood about the business?
yeah, I mean, when I was coming up, I just assumed all these guys who I looked up to like knew everything about the business. I'm like,
Yeah.
they're big. They've got to know everything. Like they've got to understand how this works.
Yeah.
But when you dig deeper, you kind of get surprised. Like you've been in this business for 20 years and you don't understand your publishing or, you know, it's like, this is basic stuff that you should understand. This is your money. This is your career. But like when you're say 20 years old and you get signed and you have this great team around you that's helping like push you, I think it's easy to just be like, oh, I'll let them handle it. But I think the people who took their careers into their own hands, and now a lot of the younger artists are doing that because they've kind of learned from other people's mistakes. But the people who are, you know, big in the 90s, the ones who actually took their careers in their own hands and kept being active and doing different creative things, they're the ones who I think are in a much better position than the people who still have to rely on other people.
Sure.
Because a lot of those people they're out of the picture now because there's not the same money.
Right.
There.
Yeah. So I know a lot of what you're doing. I know you had the Dilla show.
We did, yeah. So I've been representing Slum Village for the last 3 years.
Okay.
And we did the first Dilla weekend in Miami.
Nice.
And that was really dope to be a part of. Like we put that
sure.
on. Yeah.
And then Bizarre Ride, we had Trey on the show a few weeks back.
Trey's my guy. Yeah. Yeah. I booked them with Slum Village. We did a tour, and I've done some other stuff with them, but yeah, they're all good guys.
So how's the market for that? Like, you know, obviously we think of hip hop as this very youthful, you know, we think of it as youth culture, but yet there's a generation that's grown up. I think, you know, this, to me, the idea of classic hip hop as a genre is really interesting. Like, I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad we have K-Day and, you know, and there's starting to be more of these revival shows, but it also feels like, I don't know. I not that I don't want to suggest there's a downside, but it feels like not obvious.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's just, you know, generally so youthful, and I think it's generally like associated with a time period in people's lives.
Yeah. But I mean, these guys have to create a living for themselves.
Yeah,
just
of
like
course.
Old jazz musicians, you know.
I guess what I'm wondering is how is it working, like on the road?
I mean, there's still a market for a lot of these guys. So like when I book Bone Thugs and Harmony, they still average 1,100 tickets a show. I mean, that's crazy. Like after all these years, and you know, some of the kind of breakups and get back togethers with those guys.
For sure.
And you know, like now I'm booking Ghostface, and like Wu-Tang's always going to have their audience.
Yeah.
And they even kind of have a revitalized younger audience as well, I think. But there's also people who were big that, you know, now can't tour. I think part of it is like, if you took some time off and you didn't sustain being a touring act, a lot of times like people forget about you. So it's the acts that can consistently tour and are out there and doing new things and, you know, keeping interest in one capacity or another. They're the ones that can still create a touring lifestyle and make money off of it.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's a business in itself. And for me, it's like, I feel fortunate enough to be working with artists that I really like and respect. I could easily like go take a check and go, you know, book whoever the hottest act for this week is.
Right.
But like, I don't feel fulfilled from that. And I look at it as, you know, I'm putting music out in the universe that should be out there that I like and enjoy.
So on that note, like, is there a sellout move that like either has come across your, you know, opportunity that's come your way, or that you've like anticipated that crosses the line for you?
I mean, I don't know what, like, it's funny. Like, there's a couple of things that come to mind. Like when I was working for that agency, obviously I didn't have as much control over what I booked. There was like an Abba tribute act that I was booking for a while, but it's like, it's hard for me to sell that, right? It's like, if they don't get it, I can't really sell it because I don't know anything about Abba.
Yeah.
But, you know, it sold tickets, so it worked for people. Since, you know, I did book like a 2-week run with Soulja Boy, which I can say I'm not like a huge fan of his music, but like, you know, I don't feel like I was selling out. I just came across, go book Soulja Boy. All right, cool. Like, let's just do it. But I don't know. I feel like the 95% of the stuff I booked, I've been a fan of. So in that sense, I feel pretty fortunate. Yeah.
So if you're working with a new artist, what are the most important tips for surviving the road?
I mean, they have to just be willing to like be flexible, I think, and not have huge expectations at first.
Okay.
They have to be willing to grind it out a little bit. There's an artist I'm working with named Ryan Carveo from Seattle.
Okay.
And he just did Bumbershoot this year and Sasquatch, and they just did a show at the Showbox up there. I don't know if you know that venue, but they did like 1,000 people. And so he's kind of, I feel like from Seattle, he's the next one to really blow up. But he's, now we booked him in LA. We've got a San Francisco show, a Portland show, Dallas. Like we're starting to okay, let's hit his, look at his Spotify and let's hit his markets that he's big in.
Yeah.
But these guys, they're willing to go do it for a door deal. They're willing to come out of pocket and say, let's go prove ourselves. And,
Door deal means no guarantee.
No guarantee, just a percentage. Like usually it's like after, 500 in expenses, maybe, we'll take 70% or something like that. So you have to be confident that you got some fans out there.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. I took losses for years as an artist, but it was all part of the experience. And just, overall, I learned so much from it.
Yeah.
I think you have to just go into it with an open mind and say, if I want to make this happen, what am I willing to do?
Sure. What about more tactical? Like, is there a travel? I heard a story of an artist I won't mention who was playing main stage at Coachella, who his show was delayed by an hour because they couldn't find his flash drives. I mean, obviously, so don't lose your flash drives. That could be an easy one. But are there tactics for I know the road can be hard on people.
Yeah.
Just the sleep and hotels and airplanes and whatever, all that. Is there any tricks of the trade?
I mean, it's funny because I spent a lot of the last 3 years on the road with Creed Bratton, but he's 72 years old, and he had more energy than me.
Yeah.
Part of it's because he really took care of himself. When we ate, we would eat we'd get up, we'd have an egg white omelet, and we would eat a chicken with salad for lunch. We were very conscious of that. He'd always go in the pool, or I'd go to the gym. I think when I was young, when I was 23 or whatever on the road, we'd eat at McDonald's. I
Drink
think
all day.
Yeah, because you don't realize how much that affects your body because you can bounce back so easily.
Sure.
Hangover's nothing at that age, but still you could be doing better with your energy, and you could be staying healthy, and you could really be on top of that even from a young age. So I think if I were to go back and do it a little differently, I would be healthier.
Yeah.
So
funny, I'm tight with the guys from Lincoln Park. I hope they don't mind me saying this, but one of them was telling me the other day that they kind of had a reputation for being not fun,
right?
Because they kind of acted like grown-ups on the road, and they said that, now all of our contemporaries are kind of wishing they had lived. They said basically now we look really smart,
right?
Because they're all healthy, and
it's a weird space to be in as an artist, especially someone who makes music that people party to.
Yeah.
When you show up, all your fans and the promoters and stuff, they want to party with you. They're they're thinking, oh, we're taking shots. If you do that for 30 nights in a row, what are you doing to your body? You know? So you got to be able to balance it.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, luckily with Creed, we'd have a bottle of wine. We'd have, we would just we'd go to his shows, or he'd be on at 8 or 9, so we'd be back at the hotel by midnight.
That's big.
It was nice.
That's a big advantage.
And we'd have our own rooms, which we weren't packed into a little space.
I tell all my friends who are DJs, when they come to LA and invite me to shows, I'm like, I'll come to the day party.
Right.
I'm not coming at midnight.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
What do you think what's been the biggest sacrifice that you've made?
I mean, I guess my family, I'm remarried now, but I definitely lost a relationship over music. Yeah. And and made it really difficult to function as a father with my son. Like even to this point, I go up to Santa Cruz for a week every month and just get an Airbnb so I can have my son with me.
Yeah.
And like I've sacrificed a lot. I can't, but I'd do anything to, be with him as much as I can.
Sure, of course.
I think sometimes like you have to be willing to sacrifice. I mean, maybe that was extreme, but that was probably my biggest one personally.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a little lightning round.
Okay.
So let's go back and give one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self.
My 18-year-old self. I would just tell myself that everything's gonna work out. You're gonna go through some rough patches, and you're gonna go through some good times, and just, luckily I'm not like one of those personalities that really rides the roller coaster high and low. I stay pretty in the middle, but just don't let it worry you, because everything will work out.
I'm so glad you say that, because I feel like there's an attitude out there that like not knowing that is what fuels people, right? And this whole like startup mentality or artist mentality of like you have to succeed at this or you have to make this happen. I think that's really damaging. I think like I've found in personal experience, and it sounds like you have too, that like once you get the fact that all these setbacks aren't going to kill you and that you'll get there eventually, like you can kind of function better.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's successful has failed a bunch of times. It's impossible to get there otherwise. Like you have to learn through experiences. Even if someone from 18 years old was telling you, take this path, this path, this path, like it's not the same if you don't experience it yourself.
Of course.
It's like if you inherited a bunch of money, you're never going to appreciate it. Like you really have to go through building it yourself to really appreciate what you've got.
Yeah.
So
what talent do you always wish you had more of?
I guess I wish I was a better writer. Like I said, like I can always write lyrics pretty well. But like the ability to write something that really evokes an emotion from your reader, I'd love to be able to do that better.
So if you had to choose a career that had nothing to do with music?
Professional basketball player.
Okay.
I mean, the selfish person in me would say that. Like the person who's trying to be more selfless, I would say like I would like to be more of a humanitarian.
Okay.
Help people.
What would you do?
I don't know. I've kind of like made this a priority starting really this year. Like we did a benefit for Rainn Wilson's charity, which is it's called LIDE, LIDE, and he helps Haitian girls through education and the arts.
Nice.
And so we did a show at the Regent with Creed and him and Craig Robinson and Kate Flannery. Like a lot of the Office cast showed up, and we raised $10,000 for that.
Nice.
And I pretty much put that together. So
Yeah.
that was something I felt really good about. Like I'd just like to do more. Now that I've made some connections in this industry and like people
Sure.
like that willing to give their time, it's like, we should help people in this world. So
Yeah.
I think, regardless, I'm going to do more of that. And I also like, as a father, you want to show your kids like you need to give back to this world. You can't just be selfish.
Absolutely. So if we worked together, on a daily basis, what's something I would hear you say over and over?
I don't have like a go-to catchphrase or anything.
Okay.
I think, I don't know. I just think like I bring a pretty calm demeanor to things. You seem like you do too, so we're probably similar in that sense. But I just like, I think just to not let things stress you out so much. Like when I started out as an agent, and like I said, my boss was just like the type that like he'd just explode and yell over, like it was just bullshit. Like it was
Right.
nothing, So at the time it was like, oh, this is the end of the world. Like we haven't got that contract back yet.
Uh-huh.
But now it's just like, you know what, it's gonna work out. Like, you know, I'll stay persistent, I'll stay on people, but everything works out.
Is there something you do to let that stress go?
You know, I try to meditate a little bit. I'm not consistent enough with it.
What's your method?
Just kind of like just closing my eyes and kind of just watching what's going on in my head and breathing and kind of clearing my mind.
Okay.
I think that's helpful for people who do get stressed out easily. A lot of times I like forget to do that, or I just get too busy, and you know, I need to make it more of a priority. But
Sure.
I think it's a helpful tool. I think like, you know, people have used like Headspace and all that stuff now.
We
I
do,
think
we do. We're Headspace.
you guys do
users,
use that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you? So
Not together.
you guys don't sit in a room together.
No.
Well, not that. I actually have a question about that because I've used like the, you know, just the trial period.
Yeah.
Does it get is there a lot more benefits after you get past that and you're paying for like the service?
You know, for me, it's been so long, but there's basically an endless supply of different meditations. So that, so, you know, you go down these, they call them packs, right? But it's like creativity or appreciation or anxiety or like all these different, you're like, oh, this month I'm feeling like, right now I'm doing it in the motivation one, right? So it's like 10 days, just all about that theme. And then you go on to like the next thing.
You think it's helpful?
Well, for me, it's helpful. I like it, first of all, that it's different every day because I get bored. I mean, so once in a while I'll go back and repeat something. But like in the past, I've done stuff that was just more out of a book. And it's like, my 6th day in a row, I can't do it anymore. Like,
right.
I need variety.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that like it's kind of easy, you know, it's 10 minutes. It's sort of easy to stick in a morning routine and not, you know, I miss a day here and there, but like I'm pretty consistent about it. Right. Whereas I think if it's totally up to me, like, you know, the fact that I'm paying for it and it sends me a notification and there's enough cues in there to kind of keep me honest, where I think I have more trouble just doing it on my own.
I don't do it with the gym membership.
Oh yeah,
I forget about that for like months at a time.
I have this like intrinsic need to get my money's worth.
Yeah.
So like whatever I pay for, I'm gonna use this as much as possible and get that like cost per use down as low as I can.
It's like 10 cents every time you go to the gym.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've done it where it's like, oh, this workout just cost me $45 because you know it's the only time this month or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
I do that too.
Yeah, I can't.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Funny. Okay. So who would you be most excited to learn was a fan of your work?
I don't know. You know, there's people that I look up to, I guess. But as you know, we're in the industry with like celebrities and you get to a point where you're like, oh, it's just another person.
So was there anybody who ever said, you know, that they were an Animal Farm fan that like got you really excited?
Sure. I guess I was more excited to know, like, you know, as an artist, you want the respect of your peers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I do have just kind of clicked a funny story though of opening for the Roots. Can I tell you that one?
Yeah.
We were like, so I was just doing a DJ set opening for the Roots in Portland, and I brought my friend Mike Crenshaw, who was in my first group, Cleveland Steamers, with me. And Mike's like one of the dopest lyricists of all time. Like he's so like just one of those guys that more people should know about. And we go downstairs like while the Roots are on stage, and we pour ourselves some drinks, you know, from their hospitality. And we've got these red cups, and this is totally like off topic, but we're drinking on side of the stage, just watching. And Questlove looks over and he points at us and he flips us off, and then he like does like a drinking motion. So Mike gets it in his head. He's like, oh, fuck. He knows we took his drinks, you know? And he's stressed out for about like 20 minutes. And I'm like, it's cool. Like, they got plenty of alcohol down there. They're not going to care, you know?
Yeah.
And so Mike just eventually is like, I got to go. And he takes off and he goes to this other bar that he used to work at. I'm like, I'll go with you. He goes and like gets another bottle of Knob Creek because he's like, he doesn't want Questlove to be pissed off at him for taking his alcohol. And I end up walking back to the venue, and we're like in the back parking lot where the bus is. And Mike walks up right as Questlove's walking out. And he's like, here, I just want to give this to you. And Questlove's looking at him like, what is this? I don't even drink. And Mike's like, oh, I thought you were like saying we took your liquor. And he's like, oh, I was just pointing to this girl in front of me because she was so wasted. Like a friend of mine was like standing right next to us.
Oh my God.
So we have this picture of like me and Mike and Questlove, like with this Knob Creek.
That's hilarious.
It was pretty funny.
That's great. Nice.
Yeah.
What do you collect?
I used to collect records like crazy. I ended up getting rid of about 3/4 of my collection when I moved to New York. So now I've kind of like, I've scaled back a lot on stuff. You know, I got rid of a lot of my sneakers, got rid of a lot, you know, all of these childhood obsessions. I kind of like, all right, do I need all this? Probably not. So,
For sure.
But records were, I mean, I had like 50 crates of records at one point.
Was there a purchase like that when you first started making some money that like,
that I just blew it?
Yeah.
No, I've always been pretty good about like, I never was just like, I'm going to go, you know, spend a bunch of money on something.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent plenty of money on records over the years.
Sure.
But
what about something like something that you wanted as a kid and you just couldn't get, and then you went and got it as an adult?
Yeah, no, I don't have any, like, I never like I'm going to go get like the platinum chain or anything, you know, like I never did anything like that. I'm kind of low key, like I'm not really flashy. So yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I bought like some like, I mean, they're the worst. Like some winos,
right?
That are just, I mean, they're like $20, but it was just like, you know, it was just a childhood memory, and like I don't want them anymore, but I just wanted to go get them.
I guess I've done stuff like that, like where you just like, like I definitely bought like a members only jacket at one point, like within the last 5 years. I was just like, that'd be crazy to have that.
Right.
And,
yeah, that's all right.
I think I wore it like twice.
That was not bad.
Yeah.
So we talked about books a little bit. What are you reading now?
I'm kind of going back over a couple of things. Influence, Robert Cialdini.
Yeah, that one's good.
I'm reading back over that. There's one on the one on like raising your child to think with both sides of the brain.
Oh, which one is that?
I can't remember what it's called, but it's kind of interesting. Like it just kind of so you can describe the right and left side of your brain to your child, and so they can understand and how to deal with them if they're just throwing a fit. Like, just it's kind of helpful information.
Nice. I'm gonna hit you up for that.
I'll send it to you.
My son throws fits on the regular.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. How old?
Because he gets away with it. He's
how old is he? 7. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the advice that it gives is to just because like a lot of people who are more analytical will kind of be like, well, you're throwing a fit over nothing.
Right.
Like,
sure.
It's kind of to sit down and vocalize like what the problem is and be understanding of what's going on. Like, why are you really upset? And talking through it. And that was one of the kind of pieces of advice.
Yeah. That one's good.
But yeah, I'll send it to you.
That's good. Yeah. I think my favorite parenting book is Parenting Without Power Struggles. And I've kind of become, you know, I've gotten to know the author a little bit, and it's really good stuff. But she talks about the same kind of thing. She's like, instead of come at your child, come alongside them.
Yeah.
Try to work with them.
Yeah.
I do something that doesn't work all the time, but, well, I guess nothing works all the time.
Right.
But like, you know, I'll sometimes go like, hey, you seem upset. Are you mad at me, or is it like situation? And it just forces him to like come out of that for a second,
right,
and think about it. And sometimes he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not mad at you." Like, okay, well, you're kind of talking like you are, so
right,
pay attention to that.
Yeah, that's good.
Sometimes it helps. Sometimes he's too far gone or whatever.
Just to be aware, you know?
Absolutely.
It's funny. I was never really a reader, and like I said, when I read that mindset book, that kind of changed me. Like in high school and stuff, I never even read a book.
Yeah.
I just kind of got through it, and even college, like I finally had to read stuff, but that was forced.
No, same here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I really enjoy it.
What movie do you think you've seen the most?
The most. Maybe like The Jerk.
Nice.
I love that movie.
Love that movie.
Yeah. I'm like, if I'm gonna sit and watch a movie, I like to laugh. Like I enjoy comedies.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll enjoy a good drama every once in a while, but I'll usually 90% of the time I'm watching comedies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is, but
Well, I've noticed, like, I have this really long Netflix queue, and it's like a lot of great serious movies that I know are going to be awesome, but I'm just never in the mood for
yeah, you got to
them.
be in the mood for that.
And like whenever, like, if you're really just trying to like relax and like let go of whatever's going on in life, like comedy.
yeah,
Yeah.
and usually that's like at the end of the day,
Yeah.
that's the mood. It's hard to like watch
sure.
something serious and depressing and go to
Yeah.
sleep on that note.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, our last one is always the toughest. No, maybe not. Who's your favorite DJ?
I mean, I guess just rocking a party, I would say Jazzy Jeff. I like the way he really is able to utilize a lot of different genres and cut where people don't even like who don't know, don't even realize what he's doing.
Yeah.
But you know, when I was in New York, like I was kind of lucky enough to be around the Executioners guys and, you know, Evil D and just like a lot of amazing DJs where I'm just like, these guys are friends of mine and like what they do is ridiculous. Like Total Eclipse, and I did a monthly in Brooklyn, and like he would get on and his beat juggles were so crazy. I was just like, how do you even get to that point? You know,
Yeah.
like you have to practice for 8 hours a day for 10 plus years. And
For sure.
that's what those guys did. So it was incredible just seeing it. Like where I was just like, I've been DJing for 15 years at the time, and I'm like, I'm not even a DJ after
Right.
this, you know?
Yeah.
So it was just cool seeing it from that perspective. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll say Jazzy Jeff is just like overall just rocking a party is incredible.
Nice.
How about you?
Yeah, Jeff is always the man for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of DJs that I love,
Yeah.
you know, Z-Trip to, you know, cats like Adam 12, who just like always play the next thing I want to hear before I
Right.
knew it. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Jeff, like, to me is the pinnacle of like the right songs and the right mix, and it's playful enough. He's got enough like scratching and messing around
Yeah.
to remind you like how dope he is, but he's
Right.
but it's also not, like I love watching turntablists, but that's a different experience.
It totally
Like
is.
it's definitely watching, you know, or like, you know, you're fully engaged in what they're doing as opposed to like partying.
Yeah, and that's like the dinosaur now. Like turntablists, they have to be able to like rock a party now.
For sure.
It's kind of sad, you know. You see all the work that these guys have put in over the years, and it's like now, you know, they're replaced by someone who's doing it for $50. Like, I'll DJ for you with a little laptop, and you know, that's kind of depressing. But
Yeah, but I think that's the nature of everything, right? Whether it's art or technology or whatever, right? Is that, you know, or building a car,
right,
right? It's like you have to demonstrate what's special about the way you do it, or you're going to be replaced.
Speaking of, how crazy is Uber? Like, to me, it's like that company is so crazy because they built their company on allowing people to like create jobs through driving, and now they're like, we're just gonna have a bunch of cars
they
that
can
drive
do it
themselves.
Sure.
But they built the company because people were willing to go drive for them.
Well, I think they have a really deep understanding. It's funny, like if you follow the startup world at all, there's this whole business model that's like you're going to be the Uber of whatever thing.
Right.
And I've met a bunch of those companies, and I always tell those people like, you're not the Uber
Right.
because you don't understand what Uber really was.
Right.
Like Uber, I was talking about this with Lee yesterday. Like before Uber X, like Uber was giving limo rides to people that couldn't afford limos, and everybody, you know, whether you saw it in Big or at the prom or whatever, like riding a limo has this, you know, sex appeal to it, right? That just driving from A to B doesn't, right? And so you had that, plus you had people can drink as much as they want and not worry about it.
Right.
And like just those two alone, is like, that's a game changer. And then now on top of that, we've added convenience and speed and low cost, right? Like you can get a car in the cities where, like in San Francisco, where cabs were just terrible.
Right.
Or, like there's all these things. And it's like, your shitty, like, dry cleaning app is not that. You know what I mean? Like, no offense to all the great dry cleaners, but you know what I'm saying? But they understand their business, which is getting people from place to place in a way that's fun, fast, and cheap. I don't know if they would say it that way, but like, to me, that's what Uber is. Right. And so they don't give a shit about those drivers. Like, good for the ones who made some extra money while it lasted, but that's not the business. They're not in the business.
Help them build the business.
For
right?
sure.
They built it on their back.
Yeah, and some of those will drive, dry cleaning businesses,
Right.
now or whatever, right? Like, but I'm just saying, like, they didn't go into that business in order to solve the problem of all these people who had cars and no one to drive them around. And, you know what I mean?
But it's been great for a lot of artists. I mean, everyone in LA who drives me is like a DJ or
Is that right?
artist or
That's funny.
an actor like who needs a little extra money. So it's great that it can work both ways.
Well, LA is like a unique place where being a waiter is a pretty good job, right? And you have because it's really flexible on hours, and people that are trying to get their artistic careers off can make money in the process. Yeah. And Uber is the same thing, whatever. Yeah. I have friends who's like, their parents are driving Ubers and they don't need the money. It's just like, get out of the house and meet some people and like, not be sitting on the couch all day, whatever.
That's interesting.
I've started hearing those stories a little bit.
Yeah.
Funny stuff. Well, dude, thanks for doing this, man. This is a lot of fun.
So much. It was cool.
You got some great stories. I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yo, I hope you enjoyed that, my man, Erik Abel. I thought he has some great stories for us. Let us know what you think. Give us one of those 5-star reviews on iTunes. We need it. Hit us on Twitter, at Rebel Radio Net. Find us on Facebook and watch our new YouTube page, Rebel Radio on YouTube. Most importantly, come back next week for more. Peace.